At the business end of the season, teams are daring to dream. And for one Heat young gun, sweet dreams are made of this.
She's got the fifer, and with it, the best figures at Drummoyne Oval in the WBBL.
And we were treated to an emphatic knock from a rising star on cricket's big stage.
And it is a coming-of-age moment, you suspect, for Georgia Voll. What a performance.
The dash to the big dance is on with everything to play for. This is The Surge. Hello everyone and welcome to The Surge. It is certainly getting towards the business end of the competition. Adam White and also Kirby Short is back for another week. I haven't seen you for a couple of weeks. Kirby, welcome.
Thank you, White. It's been a while. Good to see you.
Now, you are the busiest person in the world, I think, at the moment. You're certainly getting plenty of frequent fly points. You've been everywhere.
Yeah, not sure what day it is, what city I'm in. I just rely on the app on my phone to tell me where I'm supposed to be and whether it's game day.
As I said, it's getting towards the business end of the tournament. Are you enjoying this year's tournament? Because for so much of it, it's been really even. It's starting to sort of sort itself out a little bit now. But just your overall thoughts on what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I'm loving the condensed format. I think that's sort of shifted the scope of how important every contest is. We're also starting to see young stars emerge as well, and we know that that gap between the international superstars that we get into the competition that we want to continue to attract in conjunction with our local heroes, basically, and the fact that we've got those domestic players performing so well, it's exciting. And I think as we tighten up towards the back end, it's actually when those domestic players step up, they will be the teams that make and win finals.
Has that surprised you, that you feel that the gap is closing? Because there are so many stories of young players, all under the age of 21, that are not only contributing, but they are starring.
It's exciting, isn't it? And I think it speaks so much to the pathways we have from a collective perspective across Australia, but also within our states. Lucy Hamilton was great the other day, and she was on record as saying how much the under-19 pathway has helped. They had that A series as well, just exposes them to that different level. So even at that under-19 age group, they're getting that access. And obviously we know then that it's a massive KPI ticked for the WBBL, that it still continues to develop domestic players as well as attract that talent overseas.
Talking about some of the best young talent, Georgia Voll is going to join us on the program today. She's in the top 3 for runs scored for the competition, having made her way down from Brisbane to Sydney this year. Are you going to be able to talk to her? There's not going to be sort of not any sort of animosity between the two of you?
Yeah, she's adjusted the tone of green, hasn't she? She's gone from the teal to the lime green. And I mean, there's so much that goes into those decisions. And I think it's the professional nature of the game. Have a lot of time for Georgia Voll. We played alongside each other at Queensland as well. So it's just great to see her performing, getting these opportunities. It would have been a big decision for her to make that move away from home as well. And it's nice when you get the reward.
It's one of the key reasons why the Thunder are one of the teams to beat this year. Let's get straight into the power play, the 4 headlines from the week that was, and let's just narrow in on the contenders and where they sit at the moment. I've asked you a couple of times already who you want to be on, and you weren't too sure, you didn't want to commit too much, but as it stands at the moment, have you got one or two?
Looking at the show today, Whitey, I went down a couple of rabbit holes, and this was one of them. You start looking at that table and you think, actually, who's going to make the top 4? And I have been a bit non-committal, not because I'm not sure of the teams, but more so just because the quality is so good that, one, T20 cricket brings everyone closer together anyway. That's the nature of the format. And I think secondly, as we've spoken about so often, the lists are so good and there's so many options within those lists that brings teams closer together as well. And you're just not quite sure what's going to happen on any given day. So when I started looking at the table, I thought, well, probably the Sixers, Stars and Strikers, they've left themselves a bit too much to do at the back end of this tournament. So that then leaves us looking at Thunder, Heat, Scorchers, Renegades, Hurricanes. I think the Thunder, they're best positioned to host the final, to go straight through. They can sort of control their own destiny, it feels a bit like. And the Heat, they've got a couple of home games to finish as well. They've been on the road a little bit and they get the opportunity to recharge. The Scorchers are away from home at the moment. They've got 3 to play, but their final game is at home, which they usually bank on winning. So they're quite well positioned as well. Likewise with the Renegades, they win one of the 2 that they've got left. They finish on 12 points. The Scorchers might be around that 12-point mark. And then we start hustling with net run rates as well. So the Hurricanes, for mine, of those top 5, they have the most work to do. They've sort of been a little bit up and down and a bit reliant on Lizelle Lee's form. She obviously had those 2 record-breaking back-to-back hundreds, which was incredibly impressive. T20 cricket doesn't necessarily lend itself to her producing that again. I'd love to see it. If she did, that would be remarkable. The odds don't suggest that's necessarily possible, so it might make the finals a bit tough for the Hurricanes if she can't produce that form in these last couple of games.
Just with the Renegades, so we know now that Capsey's out because she's heading off to represent England. Scrivens comes into the side. Now there's some injury issues as well the Renegades are dealing with at the moment. Can they only compete with the best if they get some key players back from here?
I think something that we've seen with the Renegades, and Fulton's couple of innings are a great example. Her knock at the MCG in the Derby a couple of days ago.
That was outstanding.
Wasn't it? And I think that speaks to the belief that's in their change room and in their dugout, because she, I think 26 or something was her highest score before this season.
And that surprised me for someone with the ability that she's got.
Same. And to see those numbers on the page, it was a match-winning knock the other night. Georgia Wareham, Georgia Presswich, they both chipped in beautifully as well. So when you know that you've got different players standing up, I think you get to this phase of the competition, everyone's got a few little changes, whether it's forced or whether it was intended based on international duties. When you've got Molineux sitting in the dugout, Webb sitting in the dugout, De Bro's done for the season as well, the big question mark around Molineux, I think the fact that she sat out a fair few games probably suggests that she's a bit further away than she might have thought or wanted to be at the beginning. She's such a loyal renegade, Sophie Molineux. So I think there's some interesting questions that they've got to ask, but I think they'd be less destabilised by some of those movements this season than they probably have on previous occasions, because we're starting to see different people stand up.
They're getting contributions from many, aren't they? I'll give you a sneaky little inside with Molineux. So Sophie was doing a fitness test during the lunch break of the last day of the Sheffield Shield down at Junction Oval. So going through it really was a punishing test, changing direction, lots of sprint work with that knee issue, and she actually did pretty well. So I think she'll play the last couple of games based on what I saw the other day, and that would be a massive boost for them, considering they've just lost Capsey as well. So it's not just obviously her skills, but it's her leadership.
Absolutely, and I think she's a bit of a spirit animal of the Renegades, what she brings, and her cricket IQ is off the charts as well. Nicole Fulton was interviewed, I think it was after they had that really tight win at Junction Oval against the Strikers, and talking about the balance that Sophie Molineux strikes between having a lot of fun and then knowing when to flip the switch, be a skipper, lead from the front and lead by action. And she seems to have that really lovely combination of the two, Sophie Molineux. So if she's back, that's a massive in for the Renegades.
We'll see how good my medical eyes are when it comes to that. So Lucy Hamilton, I feel like a broken record coming in here and continuing to talk about all these youngsters that are stepping up. But this is someone that should have been at schoolies with her mates. She instead's playing in the WBBL, and she's taken a 5-wicket haul. And they were quality wickets too. Top order, star wickets.
Let's pay attention to those names for a second. Yastika Bhatia bowled, Annabelle Sutherland, Lanning caught behind, Tess Flintoff, Deepti Sharma LB. I mean, if you're going to take a 5 for, I'm not entirely sure you'll find 5 better names than that in one hit.
And they were good deliveries too, different deliveries. Like she gave, her full repertoire. It was so impressive to watch.
I loved when she said that when she was asked about whether her mates were watching, that they've been a bit busy during the evenings, but if she plays during the day, then they actually see her perform. She's been working really closely with Courtney Winfield-Hill, the assistant coach and bowling coach for the Heat, and a lot of that chat has been around trusting her swing, and she's actually bowled a lot of cross-seam and wobble-seam deliveries because she's not really completely trusting how much she's shaping the ball. So hopefully the combination of continuing to chip away at that and also taking some wickets when it's less than ideal for her, I think will serve her particularly well moving forward too. So imagine when she's standing that seam up Lauren Cheadle style, imagine the kind of movement and wicket she'll take.
Yeah, no, I really liked what she did there the other day. Okay, let's get to the Melbourne Stars now. We've talked a little about the Renegades and the fact that anything's possible with them. But as you said, the Stars are really up against it now to make the finals, which would mean yet again they miss out. Now, it wasn't that long ago we had Kim Garth in the studio talking about the pressure of expectation with what they believe to be a very strong team. Lots of experience, lots of people that do different things. They felt they had the team. But she did talk also about the pressure of performing with that team. And it looks like, again, they're going to come up short.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? You genuinely felt so optimistic talking to Kim when she was in here. And it's only, I mean, the competition moves so quickly. It feels like yesterday that we were talking to her about that, and all of a sudden they've lost games by tight margins too. So they wouldn't actually feel like they're too far off. 4 out of their 5 losses, we're talking margins of 9, 15, 6 and 13 runs. So that's close in T20 cricket, and it gets a little bit frustrating, those sorts of losses, because you feel like you're so close but you're just not getting it done. And then you start looking across the list and you go, well, you're not short of talent. So what's actually going wrong? And interestingly, this was the second rabbit hole I crawled down around the bowling, particularly the surge for the Stars. And that's actually the phase of the innings where they're getting really dominated. Their economy rates either side of the surge are actually some of the best in the competition. So with ball in hand, they're getting a bit whacked just for those couple of overs, and that's making a big difference. And from the perspective of batting, you sort of look across their performances and someone's had a day out, but there hasn't been a lot of really decent partnerships built. So someone's been going off. I think the time that 2 people went off together was McKenna and Lanning at North Sydney Oval, and that was something to behold. And then I think about that really clinical win against the Hurricanes at Junction Oval as well, where they were really disciplined with their bowling performance in particular and set up the win. So we've seen glimpses of it, but probably not enough. Again, bat in hand, performing well in the power play, but between the power play and the power surge, their strike rate's the worst in the competition. So just not transitioning out of the power play into that middle phase of the game as well. And these aren't big margins or big misses, but it's enough to just bank lots of little things that are leading to those tight losses.
So, Kirby, if you're captaining the Stars, so if you're Annabelle Sutherland, who is a young captain, but she has got lots of very experienced players around her, when you're losing by only small margins, what are you doing to turn it around? Is it hard conversations, or do you have to be careful because there's a bit there that you like that you don't want to actually affect their confidence too much? I'd be fascinated in your thoughts on how you would go about it.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is really a fine line. I think you'll hear a lot of people in cricket generally, but T20 in particular, talk about process and being consistent with your process, knowing that sometimes you have seasons like this where you lose multiple games by close margins as well. So the baby definitely doesn't go out with the bathwater in this situation. There would absolutely be this sort of analysis. If I can find it, they're certainly finding it in terms of where are those little moments in games that maybe we're losing those moments as opposed to our approach being wrong. So I think from the leadership perspective and a captaincy perspective for Annabelle Sutherland, they're the conversation she's having with Coach Jonathan Batty, with her analyst as well, just to go, well, where are the little moments? Who are we using in those moments? Could we change some things? Will that give us some opportunities just to win a couple more moments in the game, which, to be honest, when you're losing by in and around 15, sometimes less than 10 runs in those games that they're losing, it's literally a couple of moments across 20 overs that will actually mean they win the game.
It must be hard because you're right, they're small margins, but when they're small margins all the time, something has to change. There has to be a circuit breaker somewhere. Just the last one on the Stars, is weight of expectation real, do you think? Because that is an intangible. It's hard to know, but do you think that does have an impact on things with them?
Yeah, it's a really tough one to answer, I think. Maybe in the sense that the list looked good. I think they're also really aware as a franchise that they probably haven't converted some of those big names for a number of seasons as well. So there's a question mark around, do we have the right recipe in terms of how we're constructing our team? We're looking for these particular individual ingredients. How do we give them a chance to actually work together in order to maximise and optimise the combination of those ingredients? I feel like that's a bit of a miss at the moment for them, particularly when you talk about partnership batting and combinations. There's a lot of great individuals, and that's the age-old saying, team of champions or a champion team, and maybe there's lots of champions in that team, and the missing link at the minute is how you put them together. So maybe not expectation from a team perspective, but maybe lots of individuals feeling like they have a reputation to uphold, or if I'm an overseas player, there is a weight of expectation in terms of what I contribute as well. So again, we talk about lots of little bits combined. Maybe that's another example.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. The Sixers are another team that have probably underperformed as well, if we're to be fair, and they've had their issues. Obviously, Healy's the big one with injury. Now she's out for the tournament. She can't, every step she takes forward, it's like 2 steps back. But with her out and Eccleston leaving as well, is it just one of those seasons for the Sixers, or can they find something with what they've still got there?
they've got plenty of work to do, don't they? I think with respect to Elisa Healy, she's not had the season that she would have liked to have had. 4 games, 20 runs, 22 balls faced, striking at less than 100. So I think from that perspective, I actually heard her on the mic in a game the other day saying she actually asked Elise Perry a couple of times if she did want her to come back because Bryce had been doing such a great job with the bat and behind the stumps. I'm fit, but are you sure you want me? So I think she's aware twofold of where she's at and how she's performing and not disrupting that team. So it sounds ridiculous to say, given the quality of Elisa Healy, her absence may be less felt than the likes of an Eccleston, who had really started to find her groove in the competition and now obviously taps out with international duties, taken 11 wickets, those handy little cameos that she has with the bat as well. And interestingly, in the games that the Sixers have won this season, she's taken either 2 or 3 wickets in those games too. So a no-brainer then that Amelia Kerr, Ash Gardner, they step up and they'll acquire those overs that Eccleston would have bowled. And I mean, Amelia Kerr's taken 11 wickets and she's played 4 games, so she's tracking all right as well. But I think there's a lot to do. And I think if you look at that side and you look at some of the outs for them and what's not coming in, particularly from an experience perspective, particularly at the back end of a tournament where you're trying to win really big games and you've got a lot of work to do, it is going to be those big name stars for the Sixers. If they're to get themselves anywhere near that top 4, it's an uphill battle and it has to be the big dogs that get it done.
They're big enough that they can get it done, but a lot is going to have to go right for the Sixers. It doesn't feel right when you see all the teams on paper that the Stars and Sixers would both miss the finals. Now, before we go to a break, because Georgia Voll isn't too far away, the WBBL Team of the Decade will be announced next week. No, I'm not going to put pressure on you to name your entire team. Hayley Matthews did a good job. She reeled off about 6 or 7 in her team last week. But are you getting close to your team?
Still got a bit of work to do. I'm having trouble shortlisting. I got overwhelmed looking at the little clip of the all-round options and thinking all of those players have contributed immensely across, in most cases, 10 seasons of the WBBL. So it's quite the overwhelming task, Whitey, but I'm chipping away in the background. I'm getting closer. All
right. So if you want to be part of that selection process yourself, all you have to do is download the Big Bash app to choose your 12 players before November 24. And when the team is announced, it's announced by a panel of experts. Are you on the panel of experts? You should be.
No, I don't classify as an expert. I'm happy to be a bystander.
That is a disgrace. All right, we're off to a break here on The Surge, but Georgia Voll will join us, and hasn't she got a story to tell?
Again, the swing goes the other way. Voll just stands and delivers.
And welcome back to The Surge. We have a very special guest, Kirby, with us.
Looking forward to this one, Whitey.
Absolutely. Georgia Voll joins us originally from the Brisbane Heat, but has gone down to the Sydney Thunder. And what a great decision that is, because the Thunder are on top of the table and Georgia is in the top 3 run scorers in the competition. So she's hot to trot. So we thought we had to get her on. Georgia, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, it was a very good decision to go from the teal of the Heat down to the light green or the lime of the Sydney Thunder.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, a really tough decision to move away from the Heat. Obviously, they've backed me and given me opportunities over the last, 4 or 5 years. But sort of the decision came to move down and get a chance to, open up at the top of the order with Tramari and, not looking back.
So I know you've sort of spoken about this a little bit before, but for us on The Surge, just go through that whole decision-making process. It feels like you're a veteran of domestic cricket here in Australia, even though you're only 21, which is a bit scary. But just that whole process of going to another state, to going to another team, searching for that opportunity to be one of the key members of the team.
Yeah, obviously, like I said before, a tough decision, one that you don't make lightly, obviously. Got my family involved and some people that are really close to me to help me make the decision. But ultimately, I wanted to open the batting and sort of have that security at the top and be backed and, having the, conversations with Lisa and Copes as well, obviously. They fully backed me to come down and do a job and obviously it's paid off really nicely, but it's sort of been nice to, be back to do a role. And, sometimes it's not going to come off and, it hasn't come off at all at some of the games this year, but just to have that sort of backing to, go out and sort of play the way that I want to play, has come off in a couple of games, which has been nice.
I'm going to ask one more question, Kirby, and then you can go for it, because I'm interested in just when you move teams, but then have that great start. I mean, you've scored, let's say 300 runs. It's close to 300 runs to start the season. That good first impression, was that something you really focused on, or it's just evolved because you have had the opportunity that perhaps you haven't had previously?
Yeah, definitely. I think it came with a little bit of self-pressure. Obviously, I have very high expectations of myself, and to sort of be given the opportunity that I haven't really had before, it was really important for me to try and start the season well. And I had my first 2 games and I was like, oh, goodness, what am I doing? But then to sort of come out against Adelaide at North Sydney Oval, obviously being the pick of the teams in the last couple of years. So to go out and to have sort of that performance and get a sort of decent total has sort of put me in good stead for the rest of the season, and sort of just pretty much backed the decision that, it was a good one to move, and sort of took a little bit of extra pressure off that I put on myself to give back to the club that sort of, jumped at the bit to get me down here. So it was sort of nice to give back to them as well.
Talk a bit more about that innings volley. What do you take from that? Because it's a huge decision to leave, to move away from home. I'm wondering how much the surfing at Coogee actually attracted you to the move, but we can talk about that offline. Keen to understand when you've made the move, you want to perform, you want to produce for the club that you've moved to, and then you have an innings like you did against the Strikers. How do you process that, and what do you take from that so you can make it repeatable?
Yeah, I think obviously it was sort of a bit of a whirlwind. I think everything sort of just went my way, and sometimes you just sort of need that to kickstart, not my career, but obviously I haven't had a lot of time opening the batting and spending lots of time in the middle. I think over the last couple of years I've had a few starts, but I've never been able to sort of kick on. But yeah, it gave me sort of huge confidence that I could actually do it, and I sort of belong at this level. I think over the last couple of years I've had not doubts, but sort of questions going around, am I a top 4 batter? Obviously I sort of slid down the order last year. That was pretty disappointing for me. So this year was sort of, what do I need to do to be one of the best players in the league, and to sort of go out there and sort of produce that and get our team into a winning total. And obviously after, losing that first game, it was really important that we jump back on the horse and get a good couple of wins. So to be able to do that against, the best team in the league, gave me huge confidence.
How do you manage that expectation, the standards you referred to then about you want to perform, you want to produce? You're also so early in your career, and it's no surprise to anyone that there's oodles of talent to burn in conjunction with the hard work that you do. How do you regulate that for yourself while still seeking that improvement and those performances? I think there's something to learn for youngsters in the game from that.
I think I'm still learning. I'm still quite hard on myself. Even if I, have a good innings, I always look back at it and go, oh, I should have done this a bit better. But I think it's sort of a tough one. I feel like over the last couple of years I've started to perform in WNCL, which has given me huge confidence, and I sort of just probably lacked that little bit of something that wasn't clicking in T20 cricket. And obviously, I know that I can do it in myself. It was sort of more just putting it out on the field. And, like I said, it's tough to go from moving clubs to then having that self sort of extra pressure. Obviously, they've gotten me down here to open the batting, and obviously you don't want to put all that pressure on yourself, but naturally it sort of happens anyway. It's sort of just how you deal with it. And for me, it was just keeping every game as a new game. And obviously I've worked really closely with Maxi Klinger down here, which has helped me a lot. Obviously a great player himself, so and sort of knows it firsthand. So to work with him closely has been really nice, and sort of kept me in check sort of game by game, which has been nice.
We had a ripper against the Strikers and then you found a way to back it up, 97 at the MCG. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, obviously, I said to Mum and Dad, I think that was probably one of my best innings that I've ever played in terms of situation in the game, and obviously chasing a total like that, that we fell over the game before against the exact same team. So, and like I said, I actually watched Lizelle Lee back the day before or the couple of days before, and just the way that she went about it. And I said that I think I've been going a little bit too hard too early, thinking I need to get the team off to a fast start. But we see that if we can sort of not lose too many wickets, but sort of go at a good rate, we can back end it really well, and that sort of worked. And I knew that, sort of spoke to Phoebe, and I said if we can get to 70 off the 10, we can easily get 10s for the last 10 overs. So it sort of worked really nicely, and I was sort of happy that I could bring the team home with that one.
Now, Georgia, you couldn't get 3 more. How could you not get 3 more on the MCG and get 100?
I actually, to be honest, I was not thinking of that. I was more thinking about getting the job done. I think Annie came out, and I think she had a couple of dots in the power surge, and I was like, let's just get something on it and we'll run. And then she banged one straight back down the ground, and I was like, how good's this? We're going to win this game.
You're at the non-strikers end.
Send her back.
No, I didn't care at that point. I was like, no, we're winning the game. I think we needed 30 off 18, and I was like, obviously she's a quality ball striker, so I knew that she could do her role at that end, and it was just nice to win that game. I think I don't really care about the 100.
Was it that you didn't care about the 100 and you were fixated on the chase, or that you didn't want to one-up your master in Beth Mooney because she also scored 97 that game?
No, it actually would have been great to one-up Beth Mooney. She obviously quality player. I think it was really nice to get one up on her. I think she was a bit angry at me after the game, but I think she was pretty happy for me as well, which is nice.
Tell us about that relationship, Volley. Obviously, you crossed paths at Queensland and for the Heat, and then you've obviously both gone your separate ways as well. What role has she played in some part of those sort of formative years of your career? Because it was quite poetic in a lot of ways, the fact that you've worked together. You both scored 97 on such a big occasion, and it was actually the apprentice who got the job done in terms of winning that game.
Yeah, obviously we've been quite close for a couple of years. She sort of took me under the wing when I first started up in Queensland when I was about 16. She offered to throw me balls, and I actually said no because I was too scared of her. And then one day I finally said yes. And, it's sort of gone from there. She's sort of, been there to throw me balls, and that's how I started learning how to throw with the slinger as well, because I had to get good to throw at her, because if she threw at me, I had to throw at her as well. So, obviously she's been a, massive part of my career so far. Obviously, endless games for Australia she's played, and a very knowledgeable head. So whenever I need a bit of advice or some tips, I always go to her, and she always keeps me in line as well. So also love, doing some upper body with her in the gym, and she always makes me do lower body so she can beat me. So
there's so many other people we want to talk to you about who've had an influence on you since you've got to the Thunder. But I just want to go back to that MCG experience. It was part of having all the players have the opportunity to play in the big stadiums. And I did hear you talking about hogging the nets and making sure you took the absolute most of the opportunity. There was panic there with traffic and all sorts of things. You might not have even been able to play the game there at one point. But just that whole experience of the day of being able to play on the grand old MCG.
Yeah, it was crazy. Obviously, the day before got in, and our flight been delayed, and we didn't even know if we were going to get any training in. But I sort of had my mindset that I wanted a longer hit that day, and I sort of got there, and we had an hour, and I was like, sorry, but can I have the hour? So I said, had a good long hit. I feel like over these sort of tournaments, obviously everything moves quickly and everything's on a really tight schedule. So there's no real time to have, big long nets. It's always topping up. So I just felt that I needed a little bit longer in the net that day, and just, walking out in the MCG, you sort of look around and sort of pinch yourself that you're actually there. Obviously one of the best grounds in the world, and to be able to sort of step foot on that and spend some time out in the middle was so special.
So there's so many famous cricket moments over the years. And so I'm interested, when you're walking out there, or perhaps even when you played a particular shots, did you have any flashbacks to any moments that you can remember growing up as a kid, thinking, oh, that reminded me of that moment, or even just in recent times, the famous moment back in 2000 of Australia winning the World Cup on the MCG? I'm just interested in, when you're out there, are you really just focused on the moment and the game you're playing, or do you get a bit sort of nostalgic and start thinking about the history of the place?
It was probably the day before when we sort of was out there and doing a little bit of fielding and stuff that I sort of looked around and I actually thought of that World Cup moment when they pretty much sold out that stadium. Just thinking of, like, imagining playing in front of that many people would have been unreal. Obviously, there's so many seats there, and to almost fill it and play in front of that would have been obviously so cool for the girls that played in that. And you just sort of not imagine yourself out there, but just imagine the moment that they would have felt, obviously winning that World Cup.
The green and gold then, Volley, is a natural question to fall out of that, because I'm sure one day you will be playing in front of that many people. Some interesting experiences in the green and gold game. I think it was scored 200 or something like that. Some opportunities for Australia A. How back or front of mind are those where you would really love to be playing for Australia? Thoughts?
Yeah, obviously that's my goal, is get to Australia. But I think for me the best thing is to sort of be right in the moment at that time. And I sort of focused on that very heavily in the last couple of years, just focusing who I'm playing for and what job that I have to do for them. And obviously scoring some runs in WNCL and obviously Big Bash now. Hopefully that, if I can continue doing that's an opportunity one day. But talking about that green and gold game was pretty special. It was actually at the end of our season. So just to spend some time out in the middle facing the red ball was so much fun.
I love what you talked about, identifying that you needed a longer hit heading into that game at the MCG. Talk about the process that you're working towards in terms of understanding your game, and then you put yourself in that Thunder environment where there are just immense cricket IQ to pick the brains of as well. I mean, Phoebe is a great mate of yours. She's also managed to, was still in the process, I suppose, of bridging that. What does it look like for me to be an Australian player and make a contribution there? And then you've got a Belinda Clark and a Lisa Kitely. How do they help you with that evolution of your own game?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Obviously, we had Heather Knight as well here. So we've had a wealth of experience and knowledge sort of in our camp. And obviously, Phoebe's done an outstanding job leading us this year. And obviously, her first time, she's still 21. So to be able to sort of produce what she's doing and still scoring runs and leading the team the way she has been such high quality from her. And but still can keep her humour and how good she is off the field as well. And to have sort of Belinda Clark in our camp doing some leadership stuff every now and then has been great as well. Not only for her, but for me as well. Obviously doing the leadership course with her last year, learning so much, personally, but also in a team environment. It's sort of unmatched the amount of leaders that we have in this group.
When you compare Phoebe really early on in her career, immensely talented, doing wonderful things on the field, then gets a leadership opportunity. In the same team, you're spoilt with having Heather Knight, who's captained England for a long time, really understands her game and probably feels liberated by the fact that she doesn't have to walk into that team and captain. When you stand outside of that and look at the two of them, what are the kinds of things that you take from each of them, whether it's a leadership perspective or whether it's a cricket and a batting perspective?
Yeah, obviously two world-class players. I think obviously Phoebe's still very, very young, but you can see that she has it all, and sort of the way that she can go about her batting and separate that from the captaincy has been unreal. Obviously, you can get a bit caught up in having to lead the team in that way, but also your batting, and you've seen sort of she is the exact same. And then obviously Heather, she walked in and was very happy not to have to captain and just, play cricket. And she hasn't had to do that for a long time either, and not captain a side. So you sort of seen how well she came in and played that role as well, and just sort of through our middle there was unbelievable for us. But yeah, you just sort of see that the way that they can manage, leading as well as their own skill has been super great to see.
So you're talking before about Phoebe being able to, I guess, separate the playing and the captaincy. What about the captaincy and being a friend, a mate? Because you're so close to Phoebe as friends off the field, but then what's it like when she's telling you what to do out on the field, and when she's trying to be super serious and you're sitting in the background going, I'm not sure whether she's doing a good job at this. What's that dynamic like?
When she's telling me to do something on the field, I usually listen. I can't really not tell her no. But yeah, it's quite funny when we're batting because I think she's really serious, but then she thinks I'm really serious. So sometimes we just take the piss out of each other to lighten each other up. But I didn't think I was that serious until, she told me I was really serious and that I'm very unapproachable when I'm batting. And I said, I'm not. I think you're the same. So we're a bit the same like that. We're very serious when we're on the cricket field, but when we get off it, it's all fun and games.
Well, talking about being serious, we are now getting to the serious end of the season, and you're one of the leading contenders. You're right up at the top of the table. What's possible? Are you dreaming about going the whole way?
Oh, definitely. I think that's what we're in the competition for. Obviously, we've had some really good games, and we've probably had some games that we look back on and think, what we could have done better. And I think we sort of acknowledge that, after that first Scorchers game, to come out then and just nail that run chase in the second game was sort of the way that we sort of look at it. If it's like that game, we pretty much said, well, that's not how we want to go about it. How do we want to go about it? And then bang, straight into that next game, we nailed it. And we know that that's not going to happen all the time, but it's more about the review and how then speaking about it as a batting group or as a bowling group, how we're going to go about it the next game. And it's as simple as a simple question. It's nothing. We know what we need to do. It's just about going and out there and actually doing it. And obviously we've got a quality team, and if one person, I think that's been the best thing about our group this year. If one person hasn't stood up, the next person has. And I think that's across the bowling. Obviously, Batesy's had a great year for us up the front, and so is Shabs. And it's just sort of a knock-on effect. If someone's quite a little bit off, then the next person will pick up the slack. So I think towards the back end of the season, we're still looking to do that. And, obviously hoping we can all pull it off, and we'll go all the way. But, yeah, we'll just wait and see.
All right. Have you got one last question for Georgia, or have we got it covered?
I think we're sorted.
You're sorted? So you're happy now? The spotlight's going to now be off you? You can feel a bit more comfortable now, Georgia, that it's done?
Perfect. Thanks for that.
All right. Let's get into yes, no, wait. Now, you know how to play this game, Georgia, and I know you do, certainly, Kirby. We go through a few little issues, and you've got to go yes, no, or wait. You're not allowed to say sorry. So, Jimmy Rodriguez, look, she looks like she could be a real threat for the rest of the tournament and have a big impact on how this season unfolds. Do you reckon she's one of the keys?
I'm going to say wait for that. I think we've seen some of her best, and I think if the Heat are going to go deep, make finals and go deep into the campaign, I think it's more than just her that will need to stand up. We saw 45 off 27 against Hobart in the very first game she entered the competition, a match-winning performance at the Gabba, 61 off 40 against the Strikers, 45 off 31 against the Star. So we've seen some really good stuff from her. So I don't think it's like there's this massive gap in her performance at all. I think it's actually what happens around her playing her role through the middle for the Heat that mean they will do well. So I'm saying waiting. Okay.
What do you think, Georgia, about Jimmy?
Kirby Short, you've literally said exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say wait, because I also feel like they need more than her to stand up. I think obviously probably Redders hasn't had her ideal season. Obviously Grace has been great at the top, but it's kind of hard to stop if they're all going. So I think they do need more than her to stand up to win the comp.
Great minds.
Fair enough. You've coached her very well. I'm very impressed, Kirby. Okay, Nicole Fulton now. I must confess, Nicole's one of my absolute favourites. Has she become the most clutch player in the WBBL, at least this season?
I'm going to be bold and not sit on the fence and say no, not the most clutch. Absolutely one of the most clutch, particularly for the Renegades. Hit the winning runs against the Strikers at the Junction Oval. A ridiculous knock, career best knock in the derby a couple of days ago, which was just absolutely outstanding. So from the perspective of has she been clutch for the Renegades? Yes. Is she the most clutch in the competition? I would say no. She can change my mind if she gets them to a final.
Okay, fair enough. What do you think, Georgia, about Nicole?
Oh dear. I'm saying no as well. I think she's had a great season. I actually think she could be batting a little bit higher for the Renegades. She had a great spring series as well. So, I think obviously not probably batting as high as she would like, but she's also nailing that role at number 6. I think she's batting 6 or 7.
It is unusual, isn't it? Because she often bats at the absolute top for Victoria, and then when Victoria split into essentially 2 teams, she's not at the top.
Yeah, and also playing against her old colours. I think there's been something maybe a little bit for her to prove. She's a real competitor, got traded across to the Renegades from the Stars, and we know how significant that is in 2-team towns when you change colours. So I think a bit for her to prove. Also riding the belief that clearly sits within that change room at the moment, almost, well, I know what my job is and I'm going to go and do it. And she had 2 great partnerships with the 2 Georges the other night as well. So, no, she's flying and she needs to, given how many injuries are happening with the Renegades as well.
All right, I'm going to flip this last one around, Georgia, and make you go first. The Strikers would have more wins if Talia McGrath bowled herself more.
I'm going to say yes because that's all I've got. I've got yes left. I'm going to say yes. Obviously, it's sort of hard when you're a bowler and a captain to sort of know when to bowl yourself. But I think obviously they've got so many quality bowlers there. It's a bit hard to sort of pick and choose when she to bowl herself. But I think, she's also such a quality bowler. So if she bowled herself, maybe they would be not at that end of the table.
She's a funny one, Talia, in the sense that I'm not going to say she's a reluctant captain, but I've spoken to her a couple of times about that thing of leadership. I think she's a great captain, but it seems to sit uncomfortably with her. So I would imagine when she's captain, that would be an uncomfortable thing as well as to knowing when to bowl, and she's probably paranoid about bowling herself too much or putting herself on too early, even though she's one of the best players in the competition, one of the best players in the world.
Yeah, she's warming to captaincy, isn't she? And I think she's most comfortable captaining with that blue shirt on. She's so loyal to Adelaide. She loves playing for that team. So I think she's finding a way to be comfortable with the spotlight that is leadership and captaincy. I think Volley's perspective is really valid that sometimes it's tricky as a captain to know when to utilise yourself. I think I'd probably go for this one, no. One, because Georgia Voll and I can't keep agreeing on everything. But I think also what they did really well last season, the Strikers, was take power play wickets. The difference this year, 19 they took last year in the power play, 5 they've taken this year, and that's not Talia McGrath's role with the ball. So I actually think that what's hurting them at the moment is with ball in hand, and they're not taking those early wickets. They're taking something absurd in the back end but not getting it done up front. So I think even if Talia McGrath bowled herself more, which she did the other day, took 4 for, she was outstanding, they won the game, but it's actually the power play that they're not doing so well with the ball, and that's not her role.
Yep, fair enough. All right, we're off to a break on The Surge, but we're coming back with Caught My Eye, some quick singles, and to wrap things up, our special guest is Georgia Voll from the Sydney Thunder.
It goes all the way! Is that Katie Martin? Put it down!
From crystal clear, go out there, be crystal clear, what? Back your strengths and trust your gut. Go out there and strike your stuff.
Yeah.
So So there you go. There are some of the things that have happened over the last few days. I must confess, from my point of view, my favourite was Katie Martin because she backed herself to take the catch. She really wanted it, but she didn't catch it.
She's so competitive. She was blaming her shoes. I mean, she's a world-class wicket keeper, nearly played, I think, 100 T20 games for New Zealand as well. So we certainly know she can catch. She did blame the shoes. She hustled in, probably got a bit big on her, and I was just worried she was going to break her finger.
Absolutely. And I've got to ask you, when Trent Copeland, who's essentially your boss, Georgia, is commentating, we saw there the commentator's curse on Kim Garth. Are you a bit worried when your boss is commentating you, or is it a good thing because he looks after you?
I don't know. It could be seen either way, couldn't it? I don't really think about it when he's commentating, to be honest. I think he's very good at sort of splitting his roles in commentary and obviously being our boss. And he's been great around the group when he's been here. Obviously, he's very busy with the jobs that he does, but I think his ability to split the two roles has been great.
I reckon you're very lucky to have him as part of your setup this year. Okay, some quick singles to finish. Beth Mooney, we talked about Beth before and the influence, Georgia, that she's had on you. She's, what is it? She needs 49 runs to be the first to 5,000 runs in WBBL history. And she's not slowing down, Kirby. She's still absolutely flying.
The numbers are crazy, aren't they? When you think of how far ahead of Elise Perry she is, and Pez is at 2. And there's, I think, nearly 500 runs off the top of my head that sort of separates those two. So to think that and the class of Elise Perry and Beth Mooney is that far ahead, T20 doesn't lend itself to consistency, does it? No. And yet she's been able to punch out season after season, 400 and 500 run seasons. It'll be interesting to see where she gets to in a 10-game season as well this year. Yep. Almost set a new benchmark in terms of that consistency. And I think the other impressive thing about that is what's been required of her from a strike rate perspective across those 10 years. Her role has always been at the top of the order, but the game has changed around her, and she's, like all of the really elite ones do, found a way to continue to go with the evolution of the game. The Australian women's cricket team and their brand of cricket and how they want to play, that's changed as well in terms of aggression in the power play. So she's had to navigate a lot of different things in order to adapt her game to continue to move with the times, so to speak, and turned herself from what was a pretty orthodox hit great cover drives to a genuine 360-degree player. And Georgia Voll, you've seen it firsthand. You had to learn how to give good throwdowns as well to service that.
Yeah, obviously she's such a high-quality player, and we see in T20 cricket it's so fiddly and you can't take you're going to score runs someday and not the other day, but I swear that she just always scores runs, and you're lucky if you get her when she doesn't score runs. But the consistency that she's had over the 10 seasons is unbelievable, and I think I saw something that she needed 100 and something runs to get to that 400 mark. But yeah, I think she'll nail that. She'll probably get those runs this weekend, I reckon.
So the player of the tournament shortlist, as I said, we're starting to look at teams of the decade, but there's also teams of this season because I just can't believe how quickly the season's going, to be honest. If you had to nominate 2 or 3, Kirby, at this point that are sort of standing out for you, where would you be looking?
Rightly or wrongly, so often it's all-rounders that win this particular award. Or for most of the competitions, Volley's mate Chamari, she won it last year. It was Ash Gardner the year before that, and Preet, Sophie Devine in previous seasons. So you almost have to do both. Last year, Beth Mooney scored more than 500 runs and she didn't win player of the tournament. So I think it speaks to the fact that you need to have multifacets to your game. And with that in mind, you then start to look at, well, who are the all-rounders that are performing at the moment? Elise Perry comes to mind. She was off to a flying start. She's sitting at over 300 runs for the season, 6 wickets. Nick Carey for the Hurricanes, over 200 runs, 7 wickets as well. I think given where the Renegades sit for mine, and we spoke to her last week on The Surge, Hayley Matthews is a really important lever in that team. She's sitting around that 200-run mark, 11 wickets for the season so far, and she's that sort of big game player that you expect if the Renegades are to qualify for and then go deep into the final series. It's players like her that will need to step up. So she looks pretty promising. there's the likes of Sam Bates as well with Georgia Voll at the Thunder. She's 17 wickets is quite remarkable. There's so many good performances at the moment. Georgia Voll herself, she's ticking away at that 300-run mark too. So I think single skill sets probably don't win that award, yet there are still so many of those. So I think I'd probably, put a cheeky dollar on Hayley Matthews.
Hayley for Kirby. What about for you, Georgia? Is there one that kind of stands out? The one probably you least want to play against when it comes to this time of the year?
Like I haven't really looked into it, to be honest, so I don't really know. But obviously I think Pez has had such a great year. She's so consistent. And, at the start of the year, at the start of the comp, I don't think anyone got her out. So, and obviously she's been bowling a little bit more and been taking wickets as well. So for me, it's probably her.
And I'll just stay with you, Georgia, for the young gun of the tournament. Kirby and I keep talking about all these amazing young players that are sort of popping up and not just contributing, but actually dominating matches. Has there been one or two that have sort of surprised you, perhaps, of how well they've gone?
Obviously, everyone's been talking about Kiva Bray. I think she's been, for such a young person coming into the comp and sort of perform the way she has, I think she's got sort of a lot of wickets in key times for the Sixers. They've sort of just thrown her the ball and she's, picked up one or two. But I also think Chloe Ainsworth has been unbelievable for the Scorchers, picking up high-quality wickets in the power play and obviously got them off to a great start. So, those two have been very good this year.
Well, Georgia, in our production meeting beforehand, I nominated you and I was told by our producers and by Kirby, no, she's ineligible, she's too old, and you're not. You're 21, so you can still win it. So you're my nomination. What are you going with, Kirby?
I love where Volley's going. I'll back you in for the young gun, off unofficially. Officially, I agree. Chloe Ainsworth probably more so for me than Kiva Bray. I think she bowls tough overs. She's continued to show up in the power play, taking really big wickets for the Scorchers. And I also like that she did it last year and now she's come back and done it again. I think so often, particularly with bowlers, they get worked out in their or they have a lot of success in their first season and they roll back around for the second season and people have figured out their plans. And I think the fact that Chloe has been able to find ways to still take big wickets and be really economical, it's a fair vote of confidence when Sophie Devine's throwing you the ball over and over in the power play and saying, I trust you to get this job done. So I think she certainly deserves to be in contention. All
right, very good. Georgia, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. I know it's a busy day for you being a training day up in Sydney. I hope it all goes really well for you for the rest of the tournament. Keep making runs and maybe it won't be at the MCG, but it'll be in a final on the big stage. You'll get 3 more and you'll get yourself 100.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Georgia Voll, the star of the Sydney Thunder, joining us on The Surge. Don't forget, before we go, you can still win that $1,000 a week with the BKT Big Bash tipping, as well as the $10,000 overall prize. Download the Big Bash app to get involved. Kirby, next time we speak, it'll be finals time.
How exciting is that?
Very exciting and scary that we're already up to the finals. But it just shows with that compressed season that things are all happening a lot quicker.
So much to happen in this back end, Whitey. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing who steps up in the big moments and maybe some of the people we don't expect.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been one of those seasons that things are happening that we don't expect, which I think is great for the competition. We'll catch you next time.